All right. Well, we can get started then. I was just telling Mark and David Rich that so we had a regrets from Vasilios. He's not going to be able to join today, unfortunately. And that was actually one of the main topic I wanted to spend some time on was the cacao editor and what we were, the logistics that we have to do with that project. So without him present though, we're probably going to have to table that item. And I also got a regret from Zhao Kuei, so he's not going to be able to join and give any update on the TSC today. So the only other topic that I did want to bring up, and I'm glad you're able to make it, David, is I wanted to kind of touch base on OXA and try to see, what is the status of OXA and what, if anything, you're looking for from other PGB members to try to help get that effort moving.
Yeah. Okay. So I will give you some updates on this project. The point is that it does not move fast, and this is my fault. I am the only one to blame about that. Because Claudia gave us all, let's say, the next steps we had to follow. The point is that I first want to have basic blocks on our GitHub repositories to illustrate what we want in different directions that the project is supposed to be aligned with. That means I need to have basic blocks on automation, on orchestration, on ingestion, on threading there, and on API. I have, or we have, or let's say the community has already some examples that can be used to illustrate what we want to do. But I need to, let's say, compile it together, or let's say to propose these basic blocks as, let's say, a kind of guidelines that will make sense then to invite people and to explain what OCA is with these basic blocks as examples. I do not feel comfortable, let's say, to start the community, so to launch a newsletter, to call everyone to join for brainstorms, if we do not have these basic blocks pushed on our GitHub repositories. We discussed about that with Claudia. I think she knows that we are a bit late on this aspect. Point that I do not have enough resources to work on that. So I can see some progression, but honestly, it's not fast enough. I know that, but it's still moving in the good direction, but not fast enough in my perspective.
Okay. Is there anything? Is there any any way that anybody else might be able to help? I guess is there anything that I know you guys are busy. If it's mostly a matter of getting the GitHub scaffolding in order, as you say, is there any specific asks or ways that people might be able to help you?
I'm pretty sure that once we have reached the next stage, everyone in PGB will be able to help in order to engage the community, to invite your network to participate, so that we can have first, let's say, TRs in GitHub. We can have interesting brainstorming sessions. But the point is that we have not reached this stage at the moment, and I'm just, let's say, posing these different basic blocks, and for that, I have to say that I think I have to be alone on this part. But yes, I'm really expecting to be at the next one in order, let's say, to start this collective thinking about and brainstorming about the project, and to have, let's say, contributions coming from people. But today, that's very kind of you, Jason, but I think the answer is no. I cannot ask for help right now.
Okay. No problem. I just wanted to make sure that you knew the offer was out there. I did have, so, just for folks' awareness, in mid-October, Carol Geyer and I had a good conversation with multiple folks from NIST and the NCCOE. And one of the OXA project is one of the areas that they were interested in, because so the NCCOE, they run a lot of different stakeholder groups for NIST. One of them is the Zero Trust Initiative. And there was discussion around, hey, some of the work that we're trying to do here at OXA, come up with these best practices for how XDRs can communicate in with each other. It has natural synergies with what the NCCOE is trying to do. That was an interesting conversation there. And this was the project. This was one of the projects that was probably brought up most during that phone call.
And just for my knowledge, I don't know about NCCOE. Is it a subpart of is it a NIST group? Is it something else?
It is. It's called the National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. So they're a part of NIST, and what they do essentially is they do a bunch of different things, but one of them is they create these working groups where they bring together folks in industry and work to create guideline. The NCCOE is the group in NIST that created the reference zero trust architecture. There was a whole slew of different vendors that were participating in that. And the thought was, hey, this could be something for XDR architecture, right? So it made a lot of sense.
Yeah, that would make sense for sure. If you want me, let's say to have let's say early discussions with some points of contact in NCCOE, feel free to send my contact details if you need.
Yeah, definitely. I'll touch base with Carol and see what if any follow-ups we're taking after that initial meeting. I haven't heard anything back since then.
Question for me, David. Besides kind of getting the scaffolding and all of that kind of tactical stuff in place, I'm wondering, at a higher level, more strategically for the OXA project, if there are other things we can help with. And one example that comes to mind, I met an individual, I have to dig up his name right now, at Borderless when we were there a couple months ago, whenever that was. And he was super interested in getting an ontology project going again and contributing. And I haven't talked to him. It's one of my to-dos, but the company that he was at, they were building ontologies for various specific applications. And I think that when I've thought about OXA and kind of that open architecture, one of the first things is defining what the topics, what the actions are, what the standard notifications and interactions between these loosely coupled things are. Is that work that you guys are doing internally, or is that something that could be helpful in the longer term to get that kind of going again in parallel to the OXA project, but have you guys certainly be an influencer there?
I think internally, of course, we work on similar topics because we in Sequoia we provide what we name a SOC platform. So this SOC platform is something that is just unknown on the market. If you ask to market analyst, it does not exist. So it is something which is a kind of mixed between what SIEM, HOR, SOAR, HOR, CTI, TIP. So this is a kind of bunch of all these things merged together to form something that makes sense for SOC teams. So this is what we do. And of course, speaking about, let's say, the way different components should be able to speak together, make a lot of sense for this, let's say, central point of operation, which can be a kind of a common command control tower or let's say analytical part of the XDR world. This is just to give you some illustration, and we do that internally in Sequoia.io. The point is that in OXA, we need, let's say, to change the bracket to do something slightly different. Sometimes it can be the same, but sometimes it will be different. Just an illustration. Internally, we have, let's say, a playbook language that is used and that was created before Kakao, let's say, was released in the market. So we have our playbooks and we have our language. Internally, today, we will continue to use this proprietary language, but on the OXA side, let's say we want, let's say, to use Kakao because it is the only one that has been proposed, let's say, by the community for the community. So we want, let's say, to make this shift that will make sense all together to create this collaborative environment to have these technologies to speak together. So I think we have made part of the job internally because we have created some blocks that for some of them will be released publicly into the outside side. And for other aspects of your questions, we need to change ourselves, let's say, to realign our strategy with what has been proposed by, let's say, the communities such as Kakao, for instance.
Yeah.
Does it answer your point?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Just kind of another curiosity. Have you guys looked at Stick Shifter and are you guys using that at all?
We are not using it. We are not using it because for everything relating to, let's say, the ingestion side, we do not use sticks a lot. We prefer, let's say, direct, let's say, data structures that are about, let's say, that are closer from security operations, such as this Splunk model, the ECS model. Speaking about, let's say, a sticks language for, let's say, information coming from the operational side of cybersecurity. I won't say that it does not make sense for us, but we started our product with this this approach to translate everything into sticks, and it was not efficient enough in terms of performance, considering the volume of data entries we have to deal with. So we have a kind of, let's say, strategy or positioning that led us to decide that using or choosing to change everything into sticks was not the correct way to do for everything which was about operational data. So I don't say that we won't use it at all in the future, but today we have reached a position where using Stick Shifter is not really something that is interesting for us at the moment. This is just our internal feedback. I don't say that it is the same for everyone, but for our product, this is the position we have reached.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess I'm trying to think of like, you know, how we can help or how I can help, you know, rally and increase momentum behind other kind of parallel things, you know, in the OCA, under the OCA umbrella that could support OXA. But we can table that for now. So
yeah, honestly, I will, as I said to you, before, I'm sure that on the next, as the next stage of the project, I will be able to ask you to help much more than what I've done before and what I've asked you in the past. But I have the intuition that we have not reached this stage at the moment.
yeah, sounds good. I trust that. I guess since we're here, you know, kind of adjacent to you, like more generally for OCA, you know, where do you see areas that we could, you know, improve or you know, new ideas to try and get more momentum. You know, one of the things I've been burying myself in, you know, cloud and application security, you know, now in my new role at Palo Alto. And, you know, I'm wondering, like, for me selfishly, I'm trying to find, like, what can I do within OCA that's got some, you know, direct relationship to kind of what I'm digging into these days, you know, my day job in cloud security and application security and, you know,
Are you
all the
on
things.
Are you on one of the Prisma products specifically?
I am, yeah. So I'm a cloud engagement director, and Prisma Cloud, the platform and all of its, you know, 11 or 12 modules from, you know, SCA and SAST all the way to cloud workload protection, everything in between is kind of my world these days at Palo. So it's you know, there's relationships and have a lot of conversations with folks that are in traditional SecOps, having a lot of DevSecOps conversations and working with DevOps teams. And it's a little bit of a different world. It's interesting. So yeah, I'd love to, you know, think of something though that we could, even if it's a relationship with, you know, some other organization that's doing a bunch there, and we could get something going, or defining use cases, you know, between DevSecOps and SecOps, you know, and where does that live, you know, those sorts of things.
Well, yeah, I mean, there hasn't been a lot of DevSecOps focus on OCA related things thus far. There is, so in Oasis, there's the Heimdall project, the
Yeah.
OHDF, and that
Yep.
actually has a lot more alignment with DevSecOps right now. I will say that there has been a lot of confusion sometimes between OHDF and OCA and you know, also the CTITC, to be frank about, you know, because there's some of the wording in the charters is confusing people. In terms of what we're trying to do with momentums, there's a couple of different things. So I mean, first of all, there's a lot of renewed interest going on lately around Sticks itself, surprisingly. Partially because I think, you know, there's a bunch of things going on in the US federal government and in CISA, and you know, there's a renewed focus on, you know, like for this new incident object, right, that's been created. Some of the work that's happened, some of the work on the incident objects happened in the OCA, some of it's happened in the CTITC. There's an initiative right now to try to, you know, there's debate on whether or not that object and some other changes are actually going to construe a Sticks 2.2, right? So there might actually be a new version of Sticks even, or is this just going to be a series of extensions? It's like up for debate. But my point being, you know, there's actually a lot of things going on in that area, and renewed focus in it, that because it's all tied into, you know, these new SEC regulations and the new report that's come out from DHS around unification of incident reporting across the federal government, and all these different things, right? Because the incident object, it's tied to all of this. So, you know, I think that's one area that we should be looking at, along with, you know, working with the CTITC, is how to, you know, what if any should the OCA's role be in this incident object? And you know, there's been some discussions with the TC around some of this, right? Like, you know, because there's open source being developed over there as well, and it's kind of like, should some of that be over here? I don't know. It's kind of confusing. So that's one thing that's going on, is just the improvements to Sticks itself. The other another is, we're continuing to see interest in what's going on with the indicators of behavior and those extensions to Sticks. I see people talking about it all the time that aren't even like really necessarily the day-to-day people who are involved in OCA. So that's exciting. And we need to try to figure out, I think one of the challenges we have with that project is there's a lot of activity going on, but it's not actually driving PGB sponsorship. And that's the problem. That's the challenge that we have to figure out with that one, is how can we leverage what's going on in IOB to, how can we drum up some actual interest and sponsorship of the organization from that? Because to date, it's all kind of just happening in the open source. And, I kind of hope that some of this stuff that's going on, like this potential for us to get a block at RSA, if that goes ahead, it could increase the importance of the organization and get more people interested in sponsoring. But we'll have to see how that plays out.
Yeah. Do you think to really capitalize on that and get as much as possible out of that block at RSA, having something to announce, a new initiative, even if it's, a lot of marketing or rebrand, whatever, would be something to think about?
It could be. I mean, we'd have to figure out what that means. And, I'm also a little bit wary sometimes about, there's a lot of things that we're trying to do and still kind of are on ground zero with. So do we want to launch a new thing when we haven't really kicked off some of the other things we announced? So we have to be careful with that. But
yeah, I just think sponsorship comes with, organizations seeing a commercial relationship to their membership and, the output of OCA versus it being, IOB and a Sticks extension. Like, it's pretty in the weeds, right? It's a feature, it's, useful. It could be
I mean,
as
I think
impactful as whatever.
I'd agree, right? I feel like what we've got to do is really get back to kind of the core mission of the value prop. And, instead of talking about all these different technologies, like, we need to talk about the outcomes that we're trying to drive for. Like, one of those outcomes, like universal connectors,
Yeah.
build connector once, use across products. Like, that's
Right.
what we need to be promoting, as opposed to all these different technology names that nobody really necessarily
Yeah.
knows about.
It's promoting the why I care. Why should I care?
Right.
Because it will help you accomplish this. It has this
Yep.
benefit for your team from a configuration and setup and re-engineering perspective. It has these other benefits, right? This is what we're going for. This is how we're doing it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at Cyware, I'll be frank, like, the team was unaware of the benefits of, say, the stick shifter project and this whole idea of, you build this one connector and now you have everything. And they're participants in this organization, right? So you can just imagine how unaware others are,
Yeah.
right? So we've got to figure out ways to get that message out more clearly, more succinctly. And perhaps, like you say, Mark, there's branding and marketing that needs to take place here. We might need to kind of look at some of the messaging on the website, to make it a little bit simpler, instead of having all these different technical projects. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think I go to the website and I'm like, wow, that's a bunch of interesting things, but it's still kind of like, so what? And there's not usefulness on of content unless you are a deeply technical person on our site or on our GitHub that is you know, something useful, whether that maybe that's driving awareness of something to the audience. And I think one idea we've kind of toyed with before is being, you know, the umbrella organization over like all the connected things, whether they're ours. I mean, they can't all be ours, right? There's got to be relationships and connectivity to all these other projects and work that's going on out there, whether it's, you know, a database schema for, you know, ECS or for whatever, Heimdall. You know, maybe it's Zeek, maybe it's Suricata, maybe it's, you know, Jupyter notebooks, like all these different things that are useful out there, and connecting and pointing to them from our site, I think could be super useful, and starting to, you know, work towards a OCA certified kind of ecosystem of things that we have connectors to, but also, you know, pointers to those other projects that have a relationship back to something that we are doing, and starting to stitch together kind of that web, but, you know, making it visually available.
So this would be kind of put a stake in the ground as kind of the clearinghouse for all cyber open source projects of value. Do we put like Sigma is
Yeah.
a piece of that?
Yeah.
Yara rules, all those kind of things. I mean,
Exactly. MITRE. I mean, there's stuff in, you know, ONUG with there's what's the NEEM project. I mean, there's a bunch of things, and some of them are going to be under OASIS, but many of them won't be. But the OCA umbrella could be pointers to and descriptions of, and, you know, whatever. And, you know, there'd be a lot of variance there, I guess. But if we've got stick shifter connectors to these other things, then, you know, bringing those other things forward on the OCA site, and then, you know, connecting those dots for people.
I mean, so I guess on one hand, I guess when I think about what you're talking about is, you know, it could be great just to promote, you know, all of these things, although, you know, those individual teams have probably some of their own strategies or not about promoting some of those. Is part of your idea, is the idea driven from the idea that, oh, if you're interested in Sigma rules and things like that, here is why Kestrel is relevant or something like that? Is it to actually, is it bringing them in for the purpose of the linkages with the other OCA parts?
Yeah, I think there's multiple parts to it. I think
okay.
There's the technical side, and it's those linkages. I think there's also organizationally for OCA, like relationship building with those other projects and future work. You know, paving the way for that. I don't think we just start, you know, creating a wiki to, you know, point at all 1,000 things that are out there. I think we do it, you know, slowly and in a methodical way that makes sense. You know, starting with stick shifter adapters, like, you know, centrally locating and saying, hey, we support all of these things. Kestrel supports all of these things. OXA supports all of these things. And you know, painting a better picture. And I think there's a lot more we could do with MITRE and Heimdall and all these other projects that we talk about all the time. You know, there's probably conversations to be had with those people, you know, and fleshing it out. But I think there's some we could do today, starting with stick shifter and some of the projects that we have. IOB obviously can point to the rest of the sticks content and have better descriptions and, you know, content would be, I think, a starting place. It could be a bad idea also.
No, I think
It's
mean,
not
one
the
good idea.
worst idea. I mean, it's, I shouldn't say, it's a good idea. It's not we, I don't know the best way to do it, right? But we do often get these questions, right? About how does OCA relate to OHDF? How does OCSF relate to stick shifter? Like how does all this, I heard about this other, project going on, how would you relate to that? And like, trying to paint that picture for the community.
How does OCSF fit in?
Well, yeah, that was one of my examples. Yeah.
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 That would have
David,
been one of my questions, Jason. I think you mentioned in the past that OCSF could join OCA. Do you have
We're
some updates about that?
still having those discussions right now. So
Okay.
OCSF is considering a proposal from Oasis and Carol that was put together, and Jason was on the call, and I thought it was actually fantastic. Also considering one other organization as well. So still undecided.
Okay.
My personal recommendation is that I think there'll probably be, what I'm guessing from the peers over there is that a standalone Oasis project might be one that they have more comfort level with, just in terms of kind of being more self-contained than going into OCA, where all the sponsors have votes and they don't know who these sponsors are, and taking the next step and things like that. But I mean, my own view from the proposal from the other organization, I think either of the Oasis options is a superior solution. It's just getting the comfort level to, let go a little bit. I think that's kind of where we're at.
That's helpful, Rich. Yeah, I mean, I think, and I think either of those options could be beneficial for OCA regardless. Like even just having it a little bit more under the Oasis umbrella could help assuage some of the questions. Although I would say that it hasn't helped with OHDF, but it just goes to emphasize that I think what you're saying, Mark, is needed. And to be frank, that is kind of what I thought we were going to be trying to do with OXA as it fleshed out, right? So once those GitHub repos are in place, we can start actually looking at some of that, because I actually think that was part of the purview. In fact, I remember, David, some of your original diagrams for OXA had, you had these kind of all-encompassing diagrams showing the different data formats all working together to create that holistic architecture.
Yeah, that's the goal. If you go to the GitHub repository of OXA, you will see a new diagram, a new illustration that we have built, and that might be easier to understand, and that illustrates how different blocks of cybersecurity should work together in order to create smart interactions between technology providers. Coming back on the ingestion side, we discussed with people from Elastic, from OCSF, and from MITRE for MDAL. And something interesting should be released soon, I suppose. It's an FAQ trying, let's say, to explain what is the value proposal of each of the three contenders in terms of what is the scope, what is the architecture I'm working with, what is the format, etc. And also, and I would like that, a kind of comparison matrix between each proposition, or OHDF, or CSF, ECF, so that the reader can understand very clearly which one should be the best for him in his use cases. Not sure we will have enough, let's say, support to have this matrix being created, but I think that would be a good idea. And we will use this FAQ in OXA in order to help us to choose the best approach, or at least the first one on which we will place most of the effort for the ingestion side. Not sure that was very clear.
So what are some actions that we could take as a group of who's here? To go, going into, so we're going to be going into the December call, it'll be the last call of the year. What are some things that we could do, take takeaway actions to try to get back together in December on this topic specifically about? So this is the picture.
So I put this up for a reason. So this, Mark's idea got me thinking about how do we even describe everything OCA does in the big picture. And so I volunteered Kristen Benz, our super graphic design superstar keynote, a strategy deck person here at IBM Security, who conveniently works for me now, to
Nice.
a little bit of, she would have done anyway, some time to help out. And Jane had asked, we've got this graphic we put together on a big banner for our booths, and it's a little bit kind of a mess trying to figure it out. So this is the graphic as we have now. And Kristen, just as a discussion of yesterday, we went through with Jane and kind of started trying to put out something that was a little cleaner and simpler in terms of the flow, and kind of a one way to talk about all the technology. So this is, again, just a very early draft, but I think part of the idea of, if we're going to make a discussion of how we interact with all these other standards, we need to have a better message of how we how all our own stuff, where it fits. And one of the things I looked at and noticed from here is, usually if you want to have a discussion with somebody, you need to tell a story. And the story, usually follows, in cybersecurity, usually follows an attack. Or we have a threat actor, they're doing this thing, here's the process it goes through, we have some kind of detections, we take some automation actions, and we close the loop, or there's a cycle or a pace to the story. And this was laid out so it would fit on a really tall, narrow banner. So there are those limitations. But here, just looking at it the way it is, it's like, I don't even know where to start, because you have
Oh, Rich, you're frozen.
system. Other actions go down through Cacao and OpenC2 to firewalls and IDS, and there wasn't really a flow. So I think a good starting point is get our own act together on, what story do we want to tell here about our own stuff, and where it all fits. And so Jason, Jane was going to reach out to you and Duncan so we could set up a call, because I think Duncan kind of started a lot of this, to where all these different standards fit in.
Yeah. I think this picture makes a lot of sense. And then this is step one, like you say. And then there's like step two would be, you can start looking at things outside of OASIS, like OCSF and others.
But even here, I'm not 100%. Actors' actions set off patterns as they're going after a vulnerability. And where it says vulnerability, really, in my mind, that's the target, right? Target system of somebody, somebody's asset they're going after. It exploits a vulnerability. But
I mean, and by the way, Rich, you're kind of breaking up a little bit. You might want to turn off your video.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think I hear what you're saying. Maybe I'll take a closer look at it. Like I think what the arrows are indicating here are kind of the flows of data. So essentially the CSAF, SBOM, and Seraph, they inform the vulnerability, whereas the attack pattern targets the vulnerability. So that's kind of the part that's not obvious here with the picture, perhaps.
Yeah.
But is that the things that those arrows, they're different things, they're different actions. One's targeting and one is informing.
Yeah. But anyway, I think that if we have a model, and if we have a model of, kind of a general cyber attack and things like that, that a general flow that makes sense, that that then it's easier to work and figure out where we want to talk to about things.
Yeah.
So for an
The
example,
OHDF part of that picture is confusing me though.
well, that was a recent Duncan edition. It wasn't in the original one, so I don't even know what it is or what its role is here. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like just trying to get all the things on one picture, really. I mean, I think dropping taxi, it's like irrelevant to telling a story because it's,
yeah, I mean, I think
IOB is a subset of sticks, right? Or an extension. So like, I think
yeah. So
maybe one
maybe
high level picture, but drilling down a little bit.
so maybe some of these other, I think instead of every standard, maybe just feature the OCA projects themselves and not get into that secondary list of things. I don't know.
I like Jason's articulation of, informing versus targeting. Maybe we have kind of three pillars under the OCA umbrella on, the a detection side of things, or, events and action and intelligence, or, whatever, and kind of break it up into three separate pictures, and the way it's smaller stories.
Yeah, I mean, and when we want to tell the story, if we want to do it over 3 slides or something, that's great. Jane, though, wants something on one big banner she can show. And I think there are times to have one slide make sense too. So maybe maybe the better idea is have one high level kind of diagram and maybe a flow where we take half the logos out of here, but just show it doesn't even have to be a flow, but maybe the stages of an attack. Maybe it's even just a vertical sequence instead of a kind of a around the block thing, and show, kind of in relative sequence where the OCA standards play, and then maybe have 2 or 3 more detailed stories. But maybe just a list of the black balls, top to bottom. And when it's around attack pattern, stick shifter, indicators of behavior, or analysis. I mean, just figure out some kind of stages and have a much simplified version of this. And then as you say, maybe have an automated course of action slide, and maybe have a separate one for investigations, because we do a lot of stuff around investigations. Anyway, I just thought I
Yeah.
thought about as we were having the discussion, because I thought, we need to get our own story in order before I can even think about trying to talk and bring OCSF and Sigma and other stuff into that.
So is this something that we can try to, I mean, this getting this diagram in shape for next December's meeting seems like something we should be able to tackle, right?
I think that's a great idea. Yeah. And we can even have, we don't have to necessarily have a final solution necessarily, but who can be involved from or who should be involved. I guess Duncan, as was somebody who was involved in kind of originally, or
Well, that's
you
kind
know,
of what I was, yeah, that's what I was asking. Like, I'm not sure if you're working with Duncan just directly on this, or should we create a little working group mailing list? We don't have to create anything, but like just the email trail.
yeah,
Folks
I
who are
think that makes,
interested.
however you think it makes sense, that would be great. And I do think that is a good goal to try to clean it up. And first of all, think of, we should have, I think there's a lot of benefits for us just trying to tell anybody the story of OCA by having a visual thing that we can have consistently to go to. I just remember the early days at Internet Security Systems, ISS, we had a matrix. We would just draw a kind of a four quadrant grid, and we'd say, over on this side you have vulnerabilities, and over on this side you have threats. And we have the network type of threats and network vulns, and host threats and host vulns. And you can, in that 4x4, you can put certain types of attacks. Oh, and you can put products that respond to those attacks, or technologies. And so we actually used that 4x4 quadrant for whiteboard sales discussions for like 3 or 4 years. So just kind of something, some kind of simple model of, here's a day in the life of a cyber person, cyber tools. And, as they're going through these stages, here are these interoperability points along this process of technology where, we found issues and we've come up with solutions to address those. And this is the way we talk about, just kind of a consistent way to show, here's the big picture, why you should care. Now we can get into more detail about what OXA is actually about. You've got the big picture, and take the next step.
So so how do you want to go about this, Rich? Do you want to just send an email out after the call with folks? Who here wants to be involved in that? I definitely do. Mark, David, do you guys want to be involved in that as well?
Yeah, happy to. I mean, is there a way we can collaborate on a presentation together? I mean, what I have in my mind, and I think I want to contribute, is maybe some like scaffolding.
Yeah.
How we kind of, I don't know. It might not be relevant for this, but in general, like how we present kind of 3 pillars of OCA, maybe.
I think Jane would be happy to be kind of an anchor person for kind of hosting a shared doc and stuff like that. I think she would be delighted. She was the one who's going to reach out to you and Duncan, Jason, about just the banner discussion before I kind of broaden up the topic here. So yeah, if you want, I don't know if you want to ask her to drive that. I'm not sure who all, beyond who we just discussed, would make sense to include in it, but I must admit I need to go and check my I'm not up to speed on all the group email addresses, so I'm sure we have a PCB one that I'm getting email from, but
they're a pain. It's like this lists.io server, and I think it's just easier for us to collaborate and use our email addresses.
I think that sounds delightful then. So,
all right.
But yeah, you want me to take that action then? I'll reach out to Jane. Rich, does she have a copy of this presentation you just shared, or some of those slides?
Yeah. I mean, literally,
fresh?
this is hot off the press from Kristen, from a call Jane and Kristen and I had yesterday. And I had questions about, some of these standards and what was trying to be conveyed. And it again, it seemed to me like with all those on there, it kind of lost the thread. Just all those 3 things bucket with pace. That could be a 5-minute conversation to explain to me what they are, and I'm already not interested anymore.
Yeah, I think there's a place for a slide with all the things on it. but leave out the arrows, like on that slide. Let's just put it up there,
right.
put it in 3 columns and say, hey, we've got, these different projects going on. But then when we start getting into use cases and architecture and data flows, I think like it needs to zoom in.
Okay.
Cool.
All right, thanks
All
for
right.
taking that action, Mark.
Yep,
Yeah,
I'll do that.
appreciate it.
And then I'm gonna actually ask her, like, I think we need a centrally located kind of master deck that's internal only, that has in progress and working slides and ideas and, our OCA strategy roadmap. And I mean,
Yeah, I mean, just the right. Where is our standard default latest and greatest OCA slide deck? Is there
yeah, I don't
somebody
know.
does Jane own that?
I think she's got a few
Yeah.
from previous conferences and things. We usually
and
end
I
up
got a
tweaking one.
couple. Yeah, I got a couple I got from JK, but yeah, that would be nice too. But
All
all
right,
right,
I'll take that and ask her to help us get that set up.
great. Thanks, guys.
All right, everybody.
See you.
Thank you all. I was
Yep.
expecting this call to not be very long, and we ended up using the whole hour. So it's great.
I think it's easier with just a few folks. We can talk about things, but cool. All right, guys.
Thanks.
All right, thanks everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.